Hello and welcome to Journey to SEA 2025. This is Shelley Edwards Barron here, your creative writing specialist, talking about reports, narratives, and comprehension because reading and writing are two sides of the same coin, And for those who are new to the live, when I say I'm a creative writing specialist, I mean that I look at different aspects of creative writing, not just the writing in front of the student, but the whole writing process and I'm also an editor, so I look at things from the audience's perspective as well. When it comes to students, I use something called multisensory learning to make writing interesting and interactive so that students would remember what they're learning and be able to implement it in the classroom. So they're not just doing the details of writing, but they're learning to appreciate writing. And today we're on to episode 33. Imagine that. Yes, the time is going, but no worry, we still have a few weeks left. So if it is your child or students are struggling with something, don't worry about it. We have a strategy for that, and they would be able to do their best when the exam comes around. So let me share the screen and so that we could see what we're up to today. All right, so we're looking at quick planning, quick plotting, and exam strategies. And you'd notice that I have planning and plotting because they're two different things, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So we're looking at, for reports, how planning saves time. For narratives, we're looking at plotting as a strategy because I know students don't like to plan, they don't like to plot, but this actually assists them in organizing their ideas and speeding up their writing. So that's something we'll talk about just now. Comprehension strategies, these are reminders of things that we've covered before. So if it is you want to go into a lot more detail, then definitely visit my website, wordcoach.com, to look at the previous episodes. You could go to Word Coach Limited on YouTube or check in with my Facebook page. It's called Comprehension, Creative Writing and Comprehension for Primary Schools. Um, Made Easy for Primary Schools. I recently changed the name, but I guess you could search up Wood Coach Youth. You'd find it as well. But I'll put the links in the chat, in the comments, so that you'd find it easily. All right. So as always, before we get into everything, let me look at the reminders that I went through this week, like experiences that, reminded me of things. And the first one is that students need constant reminders and strategies to help them remind themselves. So we're not really just trying to, tell students this is what you do, this is what you do, or have them, learn things by rote and then they memorize an essay. And yes, that happens. Um, you want them to learn the skills, but then sometimes they might forget because they have so much going on, as you can imagine. And so you want to help them build the skills and strategies to that they would have that as their default. So they do really need to practice every day, practice writing every day, even if it's just writing a couple of sentences that are descriptive or writing a couple of sentences that are formal. They really need to practice every day so that they can build and develop their habits because we're really working on habits. Now we're still in January, the exam is in April, so we have roughly 3 months to probably a little less than 3 months for students to build habits. And this is still enough time for them to build the habits that they can remind themselves of what to do. Now, of course, acronyms are really great for this. And we've spoken about a few when it comes to descriptions and like setting and character descriptions, um, working on, those for plots and so on. So work little strategies to help them remember things and remember what to do in the correct format. That in and of itself is going to speed up things when it comes to their writing because they would already have that understanding and that plan. Um, Context clues are not automatic. I went through some discussions with a student regarding context clues, and while he understood all of the different types of context clues, implementing it and using it as a strategy for understanding words that he didn't know was not so easy. Sometimes students tend to they guess because they feel like they have to move so quickly. And so while they know context clues are a thing, many of them believe context clues means just reading over the sentence or reading over the part of the poem and concentrating a little bit harder. They don't know the actual steps or the strategies for implementing the context clues. It's not automatic just to say, hey, do this, there's a synonym in here, look for it. How do you find it? What's the process? So students need to be taught context clues and how to process context clues within actual reading. And then finally, support from parents is golden. I mean, I know you guys know this, but I was reminded of that this week as I was going through some discussions with parents. And many parents believe that, okay, I don't understand the creative writing, so I I don't know how to help my child. Now, the thing is, there are tools, there are worksheets, teachers are around. What your job is as a parent is to support and nurture. Make sure they do the assignments. Make sure they review what they're supposed to review. If you're not sure about something, there are lots of groups on Facebook where you can ask questions. So that input and that steady guidance makes the student feel as if they're not alone in this and they may not feel as afraid or anxious, providing that you're not making them anxious. That's also a thing. So we're talking about parental support and not pushing or, being totally behind the student doing something. All right. So we want to support them, nurture them, make sure they're sleeping well, make sure they're eating well, and that they are balancing and getting a rest in between. We don't want them to burn out. 3 months is a long time to keep at it and every day doing something and so on. So we do want to balance that, and that's what I mean by parental support. So we do need as parents to step back sometimes, look at the bigger picture, and love our kids through everything that we're doing for them and with them. All right, so okay, so let's get started. The quick planning format for reports. Now, when it comes to timing, I know I've mentioned this before, but we haven't really, discussed it. I haven't repeated it, but I think now is the time for us to really, take a quick look at it. So when we are going through, the students have 50 minutes, right? That's 50. And they're not really meant to be writing the essay in 50 minutes. Like as the time starts, they begin to write, and then when time is up, they just put the last full stop. That's not what is the agenda here. We want to pace things, and students need to learn to write the entire essay in 35 minutes roughly. And the reason I'm suggesting 10 minutes for revising is that if they run a little bit over with the writing, that's fine. They're still going to have time to revise. And sometimes revising might mean changing things or adding things. And you want to give them enough time to do these things. So we don't want to have like a 2 minutes just to read over. Revising and editing is not just about reading over. And if you want to get more information about that, um, previous episodes of this series, I went into a little bit more detail about what revising is, what editing is, and you could look through the archives. All the episodes are labeled and see, which one. I'll try to put the link for the episodes, but I did do a few episodes on that. So I'll put the link for at least one or two in the comments for this presentation so that you could locate them. But definitely remember this time around, we're at the third incarnation of going through many of these concepts because, of course, the repetition is the key, and we go forward, come back to make sure students are familiar with everything. And so we've done this before and we're moving through it quickly now, but it's worth remembering that when it comes to timing, we're not trying to write an essay in 50 minutes. We're trying to write an essay in 35 minutes, and then we still must have that time for planning, which organizes thoughts, and the revising, which helps us make one or two changes. And students have to be guided through this. If you just tell them revise your work, what are they going to do? They're just going to read it over. But that's not all that has to be done. So it's something that as a parent and a teacher, you would need to go through with them step by step, give them the strategies, give them that step-by-step process that they could repeat and repeat, make it into a habit so that when they get into an exam context, they're able to remember how to do these things. All right, so um, quick plotting. The process is pretty much you want to make notes on the prompt, focus on like identifying participants. Are we told one or two students? Are we given um, an idea of how many people are involved? Usually there's a location suggested. We might need to come up with a name. So it might say, local tourist attraction. So we have to decide which local tourist attraction, but we know we're at an attraction and not at school. Sometimes they would say, during recess or during lunchtime, which would mean you're at school. So students need to be able to identify location really clearly, what happened in a nutshell, and who the recipient of the report is. Your teacher, your principal, and so on. And going through this, students would get the idea, are they involved or not, when they make notes on the prompt. And this is like underlining, circling, decide however, whatever strategy you want to do, underline, circle, make quick notes. But we're not like underlining the whole thing. When you look at it, it's kind of jumbled. We want to do it in a neat way so that it's easy to understand by glancing at it what the process is. And then you want to plan paragraphs 2 to 5. Remember, we're working with a 5 paragraph structure. And so you want to plan out paragraphs 2 to 5. All the paragraphs, put at least one sentence or few words next to it so that you could have a guide of what goes where. Now, while it might just be quick notes, it's not meant for students to like write out a whole topic sentence because some of them don't have that kind of time. But the process of the planning organizes the thoughts in their own mind. And so by the time they get to writing the actual report, they will have a clear understanding of the details that they want to put in. So this is kind of like a preview of the report in their mind, making sure things are in the correct order. Now, paragraph 1 does not need to be planned because paragraph 1 is set. And if you've been following these lives, you know that I advocate a 3 sentence, 3 or 4, depending on if you're going to say who the recipient is in that first paragraph. You might end up with 4 sentences, but I advocate actually plotting out, planning out, creating a template for paragraph 1 because paragraph 1 is set. Doesn't matter what type of report it is, paragraph 1 is set. It's a summary that includes who was involved, what happened, where it happened, when it happened. And so that's set so you can actually say, do this in sentence 1, do this in sentence 2, write this in sentence 3, in this order, in this way, and they can memorize that template and have paragraph 1 already organized, have some names memorized so that it'll take them a couple minutes to put together paragraph 1. And so the planning really comes in with what are the details, what happened before, what happened during, what happened immediately after, and then outcomes and consequences. And that's the order, paragraphs 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then, like I said, you want to make quick notes for each paragraph. And so this week you want to practice planning long form, meaning writing out whole the thing, putting in full details, notes, recommending things, discussing names, and so on. And then you want to do the quick planning. Quick planning is 5 minutes or less. So that's what you're working toward. And then you want to write a complete report. So if you want to get the schedule is on my website. You can go to Journey to SEA 2025 on my website, and the website is werdcoach.com. If you go there on that page, you'd see a little tab and you click on it and you can get the full schedule for the term so that you can plan ahead and organize yourself. But I'm advocating 3 sessions a week for each type of writing and for comprehension. So you're doing 30 minutes for this, let's say 20, 30 minutes. It doesn't even have to be full 30 minutes. 20, 30 minutes for each of these. And then you want to have a full hour to work on writing complete reports. And so what you're doing every week is writing a full narrative and a full report and completing comprehension activities. And so so you'd have to work out a schedule. It's always really good to have a schedule, not just for doing assignments, but for your own practice. And altogether, we're looking at 2 hours each, so that's carving out 6 hours. So 2 hours for reports, 2 hours for narratives, 2 hours for comprehension, and you could possibly do 2 hours for math. So over the course of the 7 days, you're working out 8 hours of your own practice time. Maybe another 2 hours for grammar and spelling and whatnot. So that's 10 hours your own practice time. So look at the schedule, and that's like maximum, right? Because you would be doing all kinds of other things, homework and so on. That's maximum. So it could be like an hour and a half or so, but you need to work out practice every day. And so I do have the report planning worksheets, and this is what comes in that. It's $75 for that. It is digital. 15 full-length planning worksheets, 10 um, 10 quick planning worksheets, worksheets for tracking their progress. So you write beginning time, ending time, how long it took to do each thing. So you could track and see what their speed is like, because now we're kind of really drilling down to build speed, and when it comes to building speed, we might think planning is wasting time. Planning actually helps organize the thoughts so that they come more quickly when writing. When a student plans out who, what, where, when, that's only paragraph one. And then they have the other paragraphs to make up while they are writing. That's going to take them a little bit longer if they don't have an idea of what to do and the details that are needed, and they don't have it kind of, organized ahead of time. When it's organized ahead of time, you get to go through much, much more quickly. And so planning helps. So going through these, so that's 25 worksheets altogether. Not only is that going to help the student get into that habit of planning and organizing and keeping their, coming up with ideas quickly, is going to help them work through different scenarios so that when the exam comes around and they look at it between what they're doing at school and these worksheets, every single prompt on their page should look kind of familiar, and then they'd just be able to say, I could do any of these, so just randomly choose one and go quickly with it. Because now they would have lots of different scenarios in their minds, know how things progress, and they have the details. So practicing planning works a thousandfold in helping students move more quickly when they're working with things. And I've also included a few notes, well, quite a few actually. I think it was like about 10, 15 pages of notes. Why planning matters, 5 types of reports, how to use the worksheets, examples of what the report plans could look like, and then tips for writing reports in the exam. So lots of awesome material in this one to help you really organize and get your students thinking critically and quickly to speed up their writing and fit within time. So narratives, I say plotting for narratives. So we're talking plotting is better than planning. When we plan, we say what happens, and that's a start. And it's really good for reports because that's what we're reporting on, what happened. For narratives, on the other hand, we're going beyond just what happened, and we're talking about the connection between those things, cause and effect. So it's not enough just to know what's in the story. We have to show the connections. How do characters feel about things that happened? How do they react? And what do they do? How do they think? What do they say? So we're looking at that action reaction relationship when it comes to stories. And that's why we want to plot, because plot shows that action reaction. And for those again who've been following, you know that I advocate a 12-point development plan for the reports, sorry, for the narratives. And we go through the hook, context, conflict reaction, conflict reaction, conflict reaction, intervention, climax, reaction to climax, and then the lessons learned. And that follows it is a touch on each aspect of plotting that would really help students organize themselves. And so, if you're not too familiar with that, go back in the archive. Like I said, this is episode 33 today. So, um, you'd be able to get tons and tons of information on each aspect of the plotting process if it is anything is unclear, and you'd be able to move from there. So when it comes to plotting, we really want to know why. Why are people reacting this way? Why did things happen? So you're answering that major question why. We don't want to just leave it up to the readers to guess. You want to guide them with their guessing, excuse me, because of course you don't want to tell them everything. You want them to think and understand, but you also don't want to leave things too vague. We have to make sure readers understand what it is we're talking about. And so, just as with reports, you want to make quick notes on the prompt, but you're really focusing on the main character. Remember, if you see a name, writer is not in the story, not using first person. If you see a name, that's a third person story. So definitely check on that. We want to get location and time. Sometimes both are given, sometimes one is given or a hint at it. So you make a quick note what location and time you want to use, and then kind of get a sense of what's happening at the beginning of the story. Make a couple notes on that. And then you want to plot the conflict, the development of the conflict, so that you know how the rising action is going to work. Then you want to say how, what's going to happen to change things, and then the lesson learned. And quick notes. Students need to practice so that they could jot these things on in like 3 words, 4 words kind of thing. We don't want them to have to be writing complete sentences because that's gonna make it longer. And again, we're looking for plotting in 5 minutes or less. Same kind of development as a report. 5 minutes for plotting, 35 minutes for writing the story, 10 minutes for reviewing and adding details and making changes as needed. And so this week, you want to practice long form plotting, meaning plotting every single point. And then you want to do the quick plotting, which is just focusing on the context, conflict, and ending. And then, of course, you want to write a complete story this week. All right. For that, yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten to the quick plotting, the 25 plot worksheets. I'm working on them, but it's coming pretty slowly because of other things that are happening. So, for now, for these, we have sample stories, narrative prompts, and we have descriptions, prompt analysis. So this is like a complete guide for advanced students, so students at standard 5, this should be really helpful to them. So if you don't have a copy yet, you should get a copy. Okay, so finally, we want to wrap it up with a couple exam strategies for comprehension. Now, we've gone through the comprehension in lots of detail, looking at each type of text, context clues, all of those things. And for those, again, who've been following, you would have heard me say, um, you know, where we're reading questions first and we're focusing on answering questions rather than reading the passage to try to understand the passage. So the thing to remember is that this is an exam. We're not testing, like the student isn't randomly thrown questions. Um, and then, there's this extensive 12, 15 questions to make sure you understand every single detail. The most amount of questions you'd get for a text is 7. Graphics would be 4. So you're not being asked everything there is to be asked. You're only responding to specific questions. So it makes sense to focus on those specific questions. And this eliminates a lot of anxiety from students trying to understand the entire passage. They might be trying to understand things that they never tested on. And so we really want to read questions first. And then once we read the questions first, um, it helps with the anxiety. We're only being tested on these questions, and the idea is to like focus on understanding what is required to get marks. It's an exam. Now, this is not what I'm saying to do for every single comprehension situation. We're focusing on exam strategies here. And so you want to review the types of questions. So again, went through this in lots of details. We have literal, inferential, and evaluation appreciation. I think they're like four, but usually the evaluation appreciation are kind of grouped. Then you want to practice what kind of responses would be appropriate for each kind of question. And then we want to complete comprehension worksheets. So we want to do one of each, one fiction, one nonfiction, one graphic, one poem. It should take a student maybe an hour, little over an hour to complete all of them. If it's intense to do all at once, then do two, maybe a passage and a poem, or a graphic and a poem, whichever you want to work it out, whichever one is giving the students the most challenge. But of course, you want to sprinkle in the ones that they understand to keep their skills sharp in those areas. All right. So, the offering for that, yes, I'm still working on the other set, but if you haven't already gotten these, is useful. And then, of course, study the past papers. You definitely want to study the past papers because then you will see the way the questions are phrased. My package comes with the answers so that you see what kinds of answers might give students maximum marks. And so this one costs 150, the past papers, because you get like the 6 in the package with answers. And the answer is not just, like fill in. You get explanations of why this answer works and how a student can, find the answer in the passage. And then these are my own creation, again, with answers and notes so that you know what questions are unique for each one of these, as well as, how to answer questions as well. So you're getting as much benefit of the insight of answering questions and studying the questions as you possibly can. All right, so that brings us to the end. We are looking at saving time, getting students working within time, um, and planning and plotting are the best ways to do that. And then finally, the comprehension strategies. So thank you so much for joining in and paying attention today. I appreciate your comments. So please let me know if it was useful. Let me know what questions you want me to focus on. Chances are I've done it already, but I'll do it again because different times, different explanations sometimes work best. And of course, repetition is key. We want to go through these things over and over so that we ourselves understand it as well as the students. All right. So thank you so much again. Have a wonderful rest of the day today. And I guess I'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.